Honestly, being nice isn't the problem. Being overly nice is the problem. That inability to practice moderation, that's the problem. Hi ladies, welcome back to the feminine universe. I am so happy to have you here. We all know that person who goes above and beyond. Maybe we've even been that person. The person who gives and lends without limit, who cooks, cleans, and spends on someone barely putting effort into a relationship, who says yes and shows up for friends and family no matter how tired or stressed they are. The one who regularly puts the needs of others before their own. We've also watched some of these people go from nice, giving, and sweet to bitter, cynical, and cold after years of being used and realizing that no one cares beyond what they can get from them, or after needing or asking for something one time in a million only to find that no one shows up for them. I know I've seen it happen more times than I can count. So today, I want us to get into the dangers and the downside of being too nice, and in part 2, we'll cover how to stop if you're already on that path, because we believe in finding solutions around here. And we'll do all this while still being kind, lovely, likable people, just people who maintain their self-respect and their peace in the process. So let's get started. I want to start off by making it very clear that being nice is a wonderful quality. No one wants to be known as the selfish girl with the bad attitude. We should all strive to be nice, kind, warm, pleasant, caring, and so on, especially as women embracing and enhancing our femininity. These qualities make it easier to bond with others, to build a great reputation, and to have people go out of their way for you as well. But there's this brand of niceness out there that's just completely overboard and actually quite self-destructive long term, and that's what I want to eradicate. Let's talk about what it means to be nice, because I think the definition has been so distorted. Nice is officially defined in the dictionary as pleasant, agreeable, satisfactory. There's nothing wrong with being pleasant. I recommend it. Nothing wrong with being agreeable. In fact, being described as disagreeable is kind of an insult and usually means you're not very likable. And we don't want that either. But you just don't want to be pleasant or agreeable to your detriment, or to the point where it's having a negative effect on you. So to be clear, being nice isn't the problem. Being overly nice is the problem. The inability to apply moderation when it comes to niceness, that's the problem. Because as we know, too much of anything is bad. Or as Theodore Levitt said, anything in excess is a poison. I want us to be grown about this. I mean grown, and understand that you don't have to take this or anything in life to the extreme. Not being too nice doesn't mean to go be rude, mean, and evil, because some people will hear "don't be too nice" and think that means walking around with their face twisted up, rolling their eyes at everyone, not acknowledging people, and just giving off terrible, low vibration energy. Absolutely not. That's not what I'm saying. I definitely want to talk more about developing that grown adult woman mindset in general and understanding the role of nuance and balance in life. But today we're just going to stay within the context of being too nice. So there are two types of being overly nice that I want you to be aware of. We'll call them type A and type B. Type A, many are familiar with. This is the type that's too giving, too compliant, doing the most, and accepting mediocre treatment or significantly inconveniencing themselves. The second type, type B, is a little less talked about, and this is the type that is unwilling to ask for or even accept anything from anyone, whether it's compliments, gifts, or help, while usually being quite the giver themselves. With this one, you'll hear a lot of, "I'm okay, it's okay, no thank you, you don't have to do that, you shouldn't have, I can't accept this," and things of that nature. Each of these have their own negative effects as well as effects that overlap. Now that we've laid down that foundation, let's get into these negative effects. The first negative of being overly nice is that it shows a lack of self-respect and self-confidence. If you're the type that declines everything, it can come across like you're saying, I'm not worth the trouble, the effort, or the investment. It can also just make someone really uncomfortable for trying to do something nice for you, like help you or compliment you. And someone with a high sense of self, high self-respect, or self-confidence wouldn't behave that way. And when you're the type that does too much, you're overvaluing the person in comparison with yourself. You become the peasant at the foot of their throne. To make it very simple, when you're overly nice in the doing too much sense, you're giving people things that they don't deserve. And people can be undeserving for several reasons, but the main two would be that A, you don't know them that well, or B, they don't treat you well, or they don't treat you that well. There's nothing that they're doing that warrants what you're giving them. To be clear, going all out for someone who goes all out for you is beautiful. I'm talking about doing the most for someone who is doing the bare minimum at best or mistreating you at worst. All of that shows a lack of self-respect and a lack of self-confidence, and this happens on both sides. You'll hear certain men, after thirsting and doing the most for a woman who was never attracted or interested in them, and they're cash apping and door dashing this woman they barely ever see, and then say, I got played because I'm a nice guy. Or the women who are cooking, cleaning, buying sneakers and PlayStations, and taking the bus to work so that their stay-at-home boyfriend can have the car to cruise the streets, then turn around and say, how can he do this to me? I was such a good woman. No, dear, that is not being a good woman. I say this with love. That is called being a sucker. It's okay. We're gonna get that together. But how can someone think highly of you when you think so lowly of yourself that you'd accept that kind of situation? This behavior basically says, I have nothing to offer, or nothing that you'd want anyway, but I hope that by giving you more than you deserve and putting in way more work than you, I can either guilt you or bribe you into liking me anyway. You're rewarding someone for not working or barely working. How long would a company survive paying people who don't work there? It just doesn't make sense, and it isn't sustainable. We have to get comfortable saying to anyone in any situation, if you don't work here, I can't pay you, period. The next problem with being too nice is that it attracts toxic people to you. This one is pretty self-explanatory. If you think about bullies, opportunists, narcissists, and their ilk, most of them have one thing in common. They're cowards. They usually don't want to get into confrontation with people of their own caliber. They don't want to pick on someone their own size, as the saying goes. They actively seek out those who are weaker, broken, wounded, or struggling. They want the easy marks and the easy prey, and that's exactly what they see overly nice people as. They will latch on until they've taken everything and done as much damage as they can. The next and maybe scarier downside is that weakness breeds aggression. So we just covered the outwardly toxic types, that's their nature. But overly nice behavior can also bring out the bad traits in people who wouldn't have displayed them otherwise. It's a studied fact that obvious weakness breeds aggression, even in people and animals that are not usually aggressive. Think about how most students will take advantage of the pushover teacher with lame excuses about what happened to their homework or why their term paper wasn't in on time, but yet they make sure their work is done for that teacher that doesn't take any nonsense and will fail them in a heartbeat. Or think about small children, let's say somewhere between 2 and 5 years old, with no behavioral or mental issues. Most people would consider them generally harmless. But if that child has a parent or teacher that is too nice, you'll see how quickly the predator in that child comes out. They're demanding things, they're blatantly disobeying, they're even slapping and biting sometimes, like straight up physical assault. Even though the adult is more than 5 times their size and could do them serious physical harm if they retaliated, that child has no fear or respect. They see that adult as weak and therefore subconsciously classified them as prey. And it's not because they're a bad kid. It's just a natural reaction to a lack of boundaries to keep pushing and pushing. Had that parent or teacher put their foot down, they'd be dealing with a completely different child. Unfortunately, obvious weakness brings out the bully or the predator in a lot of people. Sometimes it isn't even with the most malicious intent, but when you say yes to everything, for example, a person might get curious of how far they can go or what it will take for you to finally say no. And if a child who doesn't even fully understand the dynamic reacts to weakness this way, think about how adults might exploit this perceived weakness. The next downside to being too nice is that people will think you're a cactus. What I mean by this is that people will start thinking you don't need anything. You don't need any care or upkeep. If someone says no thank you every time you offer them food, you'll stop offering. If they say I got it every time you offer to help, at some point you'll stop offering. The same way if every time someone compliments you or offers to help you or offers you a gift or to treat you and you turn them down or make it weird, people will at some point stop offering those things. When you decline and say no so much, it gets to a point where people basically qualify you as a human cactus. You don't need much to get by. You don't need to be pruned and watered and tended to like the other plants or like those pretty gardens. You don't need to be given the best conditions to thrive. You can do it all by yourself in the dry, arid desert. Then you hear these people turn around and say no one tends to or caters to them, or no one offered to help when they really needed it, without realizing that maybe they taught people to stop offering. In the first point, we talked about how constantly declining can come across as I don't believe I'm worthy. But in this point, it's about realizing how you may be saying I don't need you or I don't need help. So for my I got it ladies, for my no thank you ladies who may just not want to be a burden or who want to come across as self-sufficient, realize you may be conditioning those around you to see you as someone who doesn't ever need or want help. The final downside of being overly nice, especially for an extended period of time, is ending up resentful and bitter. Regardless of why someone is too nice or how it manifests, the outcome is usually the same. Whether it takes a month, a year, or 10 years, they will end up feeling overworked, overwhelmed, and burned out. As a human, you can only exert yourself so much before you need to be replenished, whether physically, mentally, or emotionally. And when you're being overly nice and giving way more than you're receiving, when you're never being replenished, you end up drained. And the bitterness will kick in when you're sitting there thinking back on how much you did for everyone else and realize that no one is willing to do anything close to that for you. It's easy to blame the ingrates at that point, I get it, but you have to realize you wouldn't be feeling this way if you didn't overextend yourself in the first place. It's a tough pill to swallow, but realizing that is how you begin to take your power back and keep it from happening again. So understand, you should be nice. It's a great trait to have. It will endear people to you and can benefit you in spades. But you don't want to be overly nice to the point where you're depleting yourself. You should do nice gestures and treat people well, but realize you deserve to be treated well also. That should be the bare minimum to remain in your circle. Now that we've discussed the downsides, the next video will be part 2 on this subject, and we'll talk about how to avoid being overly nice and walking that perfect fine line between nice but not too nice, and how to stop being too nice if you're already in that category. Until next time, ladies, stay feminine, stay focused, and have fun.